What's up, everybody? We are back. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network, hanging out with you on this Friday. All right, we haven't talked to our next guest in a minute here. Always good catching up with Matt Lombardo. He is the senior NFL reporter and host on Heavy on Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL. Lombo, what's up, my man?
Rob, also on Threads. Threads is all the rage. If you're not on Threads, what are you doing? Rob, Derek, great to be here. Happy Friday.
Matt, I'm telling you, all I've seen, Derek and I talked about it yesterday, is everybody, making the move. I don't know. Do you buy it, or do you think, because I know people get ticked off at Twitter and they're like, I'm out. And then people don't really leave. What's going to happen this time?
Dude, I am so close to just deleting the Twitter app and moving on forever from all the drama. Trying to scroll through Twitter last Saturday morning, and it just broke. Rate limits and everything else. So, it's going to be fascinating to watch unfold. They have something like 70 million new signups on Threads in the first 48 hours, which is incredible. I think it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like going back in time to the very beginning of Twitter. So I'm having some fun with it. I know a lot of other people are too. So you can check me out there as well as on Twitter.
All right. Why? Tell me, because I said I'm adamant. I'm not getting on Threads.
Yeah, Gunner's out.
Tell me why I should get on Threads when I've already gone through the trials and tribulations of Twitter.
Yeah, you know what, Gunnar? I think the biggest thing that I'm optimistic about is people in my line of work, written content, podcasts. If you're sharing links and you're sharing your work on Twitter, it never drove any sort of traffic. You could get, 1,000 retweets and you get 10 clicks on your article. It wasn't a platform that drove traffic, but for a long time, Facebook was. So I think that if you're sharing your work and you're a creator, I have a little more faith in Meta and Mark Zuckerberg driving traffic from what you put on Threads than I do in what Elon has done to Twitter and whatever Twitter was.
All right. That's good to know. Lambo's educating us, Gunner. Come on, man.
Threads also is going to draw all of the piranhas, all of the negative naysayers. It's the same. To me, it's like Twitter part 2.
But that's social media in general, I mean.
Yeah, but Facebook is not like that, though.
You can control it more. Yeah.
Yes.
Instagram's a little better, and it's tied to your Instagram. So that's why I'm a a little bit optimistic.
I'm done.
Matt, let's hit a bunch of things here, man. And I know you are so dug in on everything in the NFL, but the NFC East in particular here. So I'll ask you, are we looking at a very similar year last year in that Eagles are the team to beat, Dallas still really good, Giants year 2 now under Dable, and then Washington, you're not quite sure. It's a lot of Sam Howell discussion, but how do you look at it, just kind of an overall general mix here?
Yeah, Rob, I think the NFC East is still the Eagles' division to lose, but I do think going into this year, the gap has closed a little bit based on what the Cowboys did over the offseason. I wrote an article last week picking one X factor from each division who could really shake up the race. Brandon Cooks, landing with the Cowboys for a song, to me, is a difference maker for Dak Prescott, kind of filling that Amari Cooper role with CeeDee Lamb. I had a scout tell me that, with CeeDee taking the top off, Brandon Cooks is going to have his opportunities. So I think the Cowboys offense is going to be better. Stephon Gilmore for like a 5th-round pick was highway robbery. So I think the Cowboys got better. I think the Giants spent their way into improvement this offseason. I think Darren Waller has the chance to be a really dynamic playmaker for Daniel Jones, and I think Jones elevates his game. I could easily see him in that 28 to 30 touchdowns, 12 to 15 interceptions range in a second year with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. But I think it's just a colossal hill for those teams to climb to overtake the Philadelphia Eagles, who you look at with Jalen Hurts, who has just gotten better every year of his career. I love what they did bringing in DeAndre Swift. They've kind of split the backfield up with some playmakers there. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith entering his 3rd season. And oh, by the way, you have Nakobe Dean, who could be a breakout player on defense. You have Jordan Davis, who's going to have an expanded role and is just a monster of a space eater in the middle. And that secondary, they brought everybody back. So I think the Eagles are the clear-cut favorite, not just in the division, but I think that they're easily the team to beat in the NFC. But the challenge from the Cowboys and the Giants, I think, is going to be more significant. And I could see it being a lot closer of a race down the stretch in that division based on what the other teams did.
See, I noticed you didn't mention Washington. And here's the way I see. I think Washington has better overall personnel than the Giants. But the big question mark is, with Eric Bieniemy there calling, and I'm assuming he's going to have a system very similar to what they ran in KC, but who's running the offense? The unknown Sam Howell or the career journeyman in Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, and Gunnar, that's a great point. And I love the receivers. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. You put that duo up against just about everybody. Brian Robinson Jr. in the backfield, not just a heroic story last year, but a heck of a player. I just don't know without the quarterback in a division that has two and maybe three franchise quarterbacks in place. I don't know that you can really make waves when it's the fourth quarter of a one-score game and you're asking Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett to lead a game-winning or game-tying drive against Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, or Daniel Jones. That, to me, is the difference maker. I think it's going to be a tighter race overall in the division. I just don't think that anybody did enough to overtake the Eagles. And what Howie Roseman has done, guys, I think they've propped that window open for the next 3 to 5 years that they are the top dog in the team to beat in the NFC.
Interesting. Let me just go back to the Giants for a second, Matt. How do you see the Saquon thing playing out? Like, I said this to Gunnar yesterday. I don't think he's some derisive force. I don't see that being him. I don't see him sitting out a year. It never works out well for the guys anyway, but he's not happy and he's let it be known. Do you think they get that deal done? I think July 17th was the deadline. So they have about 10 more days. What do you think happens?
Yeah, Rob, talking to people around the league, there's a belief that it was going to get settled by training camp, by the deadline of July 17th. But we're about, 10 days away, a week and a half away, and there doesn't seem to be much progress there. I do think ultimately a deal gets done. But what I think is really interesting and kind of fascinating is the day after Saquon Barkley goes to his youth camp and tells the assembled media just how unhappy he is with the leaks publicly about the negotiations, just how seriously he's considering sitting out and holding out the entire year, that within 24 hours, there's a report from Ian Rappaport that the Giants put the original offer back on the table. So I think that was a really smart move by Saquon Barkley to kind of air those grievances publicly and say, listen, I'm ticked off here. I don't like how this is going, and I'm considering sitting out. And the Giants pretty much immediately put that offer back on the table. So I do think ultimately a deal gets done, and it doesn't really benefit anybody for it not to get done. You look at what he was last year, 1,300-yard rusher, close to 2,000 yards in terms of total offense. One of the more prolific seasons of his career. He's shown that he can stay healthy. And I'd make an argument they don't win that playoff game against the Vikings without Saquon Barkley and what he did in that game, especially in the first half. So it doesn't benefit Saquon to hold out because it never really works out for the players. And it certainly doesn't benefit the Giants to go into this year without Saquon Barkley in the backfield after everything they did over the course of the last two off seasons to surround Daniel Jones with some real help.
What Brian Daboll did with Daniel Jones last year was simply phenomenal in terms of making a much more efficient quarterback, turning the ball over less. How much better can he be in year two under Daboll?
Yeah, I think that some of the bringing in Paris Campbell at wide receiver, bringing in Darren Waller, Saquon Barkley being back and another year removed from the torn ACL and the high ankle sprains, not to mention some of the moves on the offensive line. I mean, you look at Evan Neal, the starting right tackle, and the dude is just jacked going into training camp. Andrew Thomas, second-team All-Pro a year ago, maybe pushing for first-team All-Pro this season. I think it's more about what the Giants did around Daniel Jones and the offensive line getting incrementally better, the talent around Daniel Jones getting better than anything about Jones, not to mention the natural progression of a quarterback in a second year with a quarterback-friendly head coach and quarterback-friendly offensive coordinator. Like I said, I think the biggest thing for Jones is cutting down on the turnovers. And if he can get into that 28 to 30 touchdowns, 10 to 12 interception range, I think the Giants sign up for that. And I think that's how you win double-digit games, especially with a defense that at times was as dominant as the Giants defense was a year ago.
Matt, how surprised were you? And I know they lost CJ, GJ, and a couple other pieces, no doubt, but they were able to retain as much as they retained the Eagles. How surprised were you with the offseason?
Yeah, Rob, I thought that's just kind of part of the forward-thinking plan of Howie Roseman. And it's not just who they lost, but, you watch TJ Edwards go sign with the Chicago Bears. Okay, Nakobe Dean is going to slide into that role. And Ndamukong Suh, obviously floating out there in free agency, probably not going to be back. Okay, here's Jordan Davis. These guys all kind of had a redshirt year a year ago. And I think over the course of the last two drafts, I might have said this on this show or another one, they've really built a quote-unquote too deep, as you'd see on a college roster, where you have your upperclassmen who are the starters, but just below there, you got these backups that are kind of champing at the bit and are equally talented, highly touted recruits. They had some really high caliber rookies the last couple of years that have been developing. that's why I think the Eagles don't take a step back, because they've built out quality young depth on the roster. And, bringing back Jason Kelce is going to be huge. You're looking at continuity along the offensive line. And, oh, by the way, because Jason Kelce came back, you don't have a hole at offensive guard. It just seems like there were so many moves that they made over the last 2 years that prevented them from being a whole lot of turnover and a whole lot of holes being created this offseason.
Well, you just look at the Eagles' backfield, the deepest backfield in the NFL. Big question mark is the two front guys. Can they stay healthy, which they haven't done? Rob and I debated this a couple of weeks ago. Do we see a 1,000-yard rusher in the Eagles' backfield? No, but I do think it's still going to be one of the top running games in the NFL because of that offensive line.
And not to mention Jalen Hurts, right? Because you look at what Jalen Hurts did a year ago, something like 7 red zone touchdowns, led the league in red zone rushing scores among quarterbacks. You throw in the running backs, you throw in the offensive line in front of him, you throw in the fact that he's mobile and a dual threat quarterback. I think the days are gone, Derek, and I've talked to friends about this just casually down the shore and at parties and those sort of things about the workhorse running back is an endangered species in the NFL, and we all know that. But I don't think we've seen that more evident ever than this offseason. When you look at Dalvin Cook, prime of his career, coming off one of the strongest statistical seasons of his career, just released in favor of Alexander Madison because he's younger and they have some younger running backs. Eagles don't bring back Miles Sanders. He goes to Carolina, but you have this 3-headed monster in the backfield. You look at how teams have handled the running back position. The average salary of kickers is something like $6.5 million. There are 7 teams in the NFL who spend $7 million or less on the running back position because they have a guy they drafted in the 3rd round. They have a journeyman backup and a guy on the veteran minimum. So, again, I think there's still value to the Saquon Barkleys and the Dalvin Cooks and the Tony Pollards and those guys. But I think you're seeing more and more teams are going to that model of how cheap can I just, get by with this position with multiple players so we're not beating them up. And we're not paying them top dollar, and we can spend on the top corner, the top wide receiver, and the top offensive tackle.
And that's crazy when you point out the kicker comp. That is absolutely nuts. And I think, you know what, Matt? Even the Eagles are probably even more emboldened with that philosophy because they feel like their offensive line is so good. Not to say you could plug anybody in there, but you don't need Walter Payton back there, to do well. That said, were you surprised that Sanders got what he got from the Panthers? Because it looks like that it's completely dried up for almost everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, the contract itself was surprising, but you start looking what Scott Fitterer has done down there. They bring in Adam Thielen. I know you traded away DJ Moore as part of that deal, but you bring in Adam Thielen. You bring in the tight end. Used to play for the Bengals and the Jets. Names escape me for some reason.
Hurst.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst. Right. Thanks, Rob. And you bring in Miles Sanders. All of a sudden, you have a pretty exciting young core around your franchise quarterback. And that's what I thought the Giants were going to try to do when they drafted Saquon Barkley number 2 overall. Had they not traded Odell Beckham back in the day, you would have had Odell Beckham Jr., Saquon Barkley, and a young quarterback. Pretty decent core to build around. I think that's what the Panthers are doing. And I think that they overpaid, not just because what Miles Sanders has proven to do as a running back, but caught something like 50 balls over the last couple of years. So he's a dump-off option, a safety valve for your young quarterback. I think there are only so many situations like that where teams are going to back up the truck. And Carolina makes perfect sense because they want to support their rookie franchise quarterback and set him up for immediate success. And that's why I think Sanders was a good fit there.
Man, how do you size up the NFC South? Because, when we talk about who's the front runner, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, throw all the names in the hat, right? I mean, I don't know that there's a clear-cut front runner in that division. I've written that a couple times, Gunnar. I love what Atlanta's done. They've got some really nice targeted free agent moves, bringing in Calais Campbell and a couple other weapons on defense. But Bijan Robinson, man, he could come out of the chute and be a 2,000-yard running back right away. Drake London, an elite playmaker. They already had Kyle Pitts. They bring in Jonnu Smith. Is Desmond Ridder the guy? This is his audition. But I put their young core up against any in the league as far as excitement, dynamic playmaking ability, all that. The Saints are the Saints. Who knows what Derek Carr is going to be able to do there? Who knows how healthy they're going to be? I think Tampa is kind of straddling that line between, hey, can we get lucky with Kyle Trask and or Baker Mayfield? But we don't have the money to spend, so we can't spend. So we're rebuilding. We try to compete. We don't really know. And Carolina, Look, the opportunity's there. I think Frank Reich is a brilliant offensive mind, more so than he was able to show with Carson Wentz as the quarterback in Indianapolis. Bryce Young offers a lot of excitement, a lot of upside. And they have a nice young core, too. If you told me in January that the Panthers went from worst to first, I'd probably believe you. If you said Atlanta won the division, I'd believe you too. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's Tampa or New Orleans. So I don't know how I size it up other than it's wide open and there's a case to be made for all of them. That's how I would size that division up.
All right, let me go back to the East for a minute. The Cowboys. Kellen Moore out, Mike McCarthy in as the play caller, has been there as a coach, obviously. Good move, bad move, indifferent. How do you think that affects things with McCarthy being – because, look, Labo, let's face it, we've seen disasters late in games in huge spots.
We saw that last play with Ezekiel Elliott, right?
Well, the Ezekiel Elliott play the year before with Dak thinking he could spike it, et cetera. We've seen this thing blow up. Is this a good or bad thing for the Cowboys?
The bloom is kind of off the rose from the big PR push a couple years ago of Mike McCarthy, gathering all the analytics minds in his basement, right? Remember that? The big push on it. The next analytics genius, Mike McCarthy. Okay, that didn't exactly work out. I think the Cowboys offense, I think they're going to be fine just because they're better at wide receiver. I really think losing Amari Cooper a year ago, that was one of the bigger miscalculations I've seen the Cowboys make maybe in a decade, but you're bringing Cooks to rectify that. I know people in that building are really fired up about the young tight ends that they have with Dalton Schultz, leaving for Houston via free agency. I think they'll be better. I don't think they're a top 10 offense by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think they'll be better. But I think the real storyline here, Rob, is what's the impact going to be with Kellen Moore and the Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert? Because that's a team that has all the pieces you want. Justin Herbert, to me, top 5 quarterback by talent, not necessarily by accomplishments. Now you have a fresh voice in Kellen Moore who understands how to get the most out of quarterbacks. I'm really excited to see what happens with the Chargers, Moore, and Herbert, more so than I am concerned about how the Cowboys offense shapes up with Mike McCarthy doing whatever he does.
Matt, I've jokingly said so many times, and Rob can attest to this, when it comes to the Chargers, because I cover that team, I've watched that team for so long, there's just this dark cloud over that franchise. It doesn't make a difference if it's Phillip Rivers. It doesn't make a difference who's quarterbacking that team. They just can't get out of their own way and go deep into the playoffs. I don't know what it is about that franchise. They have the talent, no question about that, but they just can't get out of their own way.
Well, right now, you look at the AFC, it's hard to get out of your way, right? I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes, who you have to have your A game for, as the Bengals found out, 60 minutes, not 59 minutes, 58 seconds, 60 minutes. You got Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who I think I'm really high on them. I think they take another step forward. I think they're still the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay. But then you have the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton arriving and Russell Wilson at quarterback. It's just a who's who. The Dolphins are going to be better. The Jets are going to be better. It's hard to win in the NFL. It's extremely difficult to win in the modern AFC with all of the quarterbacks that are on that side of the bracket.
With all that said, Matt, I know you wrote about this with Aaron Rodgers. We're all sort of just assuming they make the leap to the playoffs. I do like their team a lot, but we haven't seen the Jets be in that position in a while. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think that they have a lot of reason to be optimistic. They need to get Breece Hall back in the backfield and back healthy. But you look at what they've done. Garrett Wilson is a playmaker. That defense is loaded all of a sudden, at all 3 levels. They have playmakers at all 3 levels. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to make them better. I think they're maybe the second biggest threat to the Buffalo Bills in that division, because I think Miami has all of the pieces that if Tua stays healthy, they're going to make a real run. I think the Dolphins are dangerous. But the concern with Aaron Rodgers, and I've talked to several scouts about this, there's a real concern that he's been very risk averse over the last couple of years, hasn't pushed the ball deep downfield. They've had some pretty good wide receivers to do that with, especially last year in Green Bay. Will that change with Garrett Wilson? I guess we'll see. But he's been risk averse. He's been really quick to get rid of the football, shying away from contact in the pocket. So will they be better? I think they'll be better. But does that mean they're going to win 13 games and win the AFC East? I'm kind of skeptical.
If somehow, some way, New England gets DeAndre Hopkins, how much better does that make Matt Jones in that offense?
Or Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook, for that matter.
Yeah, if they get Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins, then I think they're in the conversation, guys. But, I just think that the gap is too wide between the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets, and New England. DeAndre Hopkins would be a really nice piece, But I don't know that Devontae Parker is the ideal number 2 target up there. I'm still skeptical about Mac Jones. I'm not sure that people in that building are completely sold on Mac Jones being the answer. And I think that kind of like the Buccaneers, the Patriots are another one of these franchises that are kind of in this transition between, are we going to rebuild or are we going to go for it? And if they sign DeAndre Hopkins, they're obviously all in. But I just don't know that they have the quarterback play or the depth across the board to overtake some of the other teams in the division that are just loaded on both sides of the ball.
Matt, that said, let's stay on the Pats. Derek and I were talking about a story yesterday where it seems like there's a little bit of tension between Belichick and Kraft. Like maybe there's something starting to grow out of that. It's been 3 years. They haven't, since Brady left, and the only playoff appearance, they got smoked by the Bills. Does Belichick just straight write his own ticket, or could this get to the point where Kraft's like, dude, like we got to start winning here. Brady's long gone. He ain't walking through that door anytime soon.
Yeah, I think, what is he, 6 wins shy of surpassing Don Shula?
Yeah.
I think that that's the litmus test. I think that if they win 6 games or more this year, I think that that's the moment that Belichick is either content to walk away, or if he's not and he thinks that he can be Andy Reid and have that renaissance and go somewhere else at this age and win another Super Bowl and add that to his legacy, or win another one in New England, that's when I think Robert Kraft starts to get a little bit impatient. But I don't think that there's much excitement to move on from Belichick before he has the chance to become the winningest coach of all time. But if it takes 2 years, if they go 4-14, 4-13, or whatever it is,
right?
I don't know that he has a chance to break that record in New England.
When you look at coaches in 2023, to you, which coaches are on the hot seat more so than others?
Boy, I have not sat down and had that conversation with myself yet, Derek. But, just off the top of my head, I think Mike McCarthy is right at the top of that list.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised that they took the half measure last year and let Kellen Moore go and didn't fire Mike McCarthy. So I think McCarthy is definitely on the hot seat there. And you look in Las Vegas, that's another situation where I know that Mark Davis doesn't have the capital to pay multiple head coaches. But if Josh McDaniels doesn't turn it around, and if this Jimmy Garoppolo thing blows up in their face, is McDaniels the next guy who's fired before week 7? I think it's possible.
Wow. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Hey, let me ask you, I saw folks in the chat wondering about this. I'll bounce it off you. Were you surprised they brought in Matt Patricia, considering the history with Slay and the way it ended in Detroit? Wasn't exactly great last year. I know he was kind of out of his purview there with the offensive side, but were you surprised at that?
Yeah, I think the whole thing kind of surprised me, but the counterpoint to that is he's a guy with head coaching experience on a staff where I think we saw in the Super Bowl last year that I think that Nick Sirianni kind of got away from what Nick Sirianni is and being hyper aggressive and being hyper driven by analytics. And I don't know necessarily that Matt Patricia is an analytics guy, but he has head coaching experience to the point where he can get on the headset to Nick Sirianni and say, maybe we don't punt here. I think that might be kind of one of the moves by Howie Roseman to kind of buttress this staff with some more experienced voices, that when you get to those big moments, you don't lose your identity.
Right. Makes sense.
When you talk about the Eagles as a whole, are you more intrigued by how the new coaching and strategic places, 2 new coordinators, position coaches, implement their style, their scheme, or are you more intrigued by some of the new faces or the players that have had the red shirt years now stepping up more so?
To me, Gunnar, it's all about the red shirt players, because that's what you're banking a lot of your future on, not just 2023, right? If Jordan Davis is the guy, if he becomes an elite run-stuffing defensive tackle, you're in business, especially with Brandon Graham next to him. And, oh, by the way, you brought in Nolan Smith, who is going to get his reps this year, but he's ultimately going to replace a guy like Brandon Graham. I mean, you have Nakobe Dean. You brought in all of these guys that are kind of the bedrock of your next wave of what this franchise hopes it's going to be. They better be right, and these guys better be players. So to me, the coaching is one thing, but the talent can mask even some growing pains on the coaching front. I'm interested to see just how talented these guys are and just how dominant they are right out of the chute.
All right, Matt, I see the Penn State stuff behind you. I know what a Penn State fan you are. So let's take off the NFL hat. Let's put the college football hat on. I love this kid. I think he's going to be awesome. Drew Allar, the quarterback who's going to be stepping in for Clifford, who was there for 14 years. How good do you think Alar is going to be? How good do you think Penn State's going to be this year?
Yeah, I spoke to an NFL QB coach last summer before the college football season, and he told me that he had a conversation with James Franklin, and he told him point blank, you have the next Josh Allen on your hands. And you watch what he did in Purdue in the season opener on the road, first appearance, and leads a pretty strong couple of drives when Clifford got dinged. You watch him in the blue-white game, some of the plays that he made. I know it's just a spring game. You can only determine so much off of that. But he looks like a guy who's a franchise quarterback in the making. And that's really been their missing piece up there, right? And, you can talk about what Trace McSorley did. He was never an elite quarterback. Yeah. Sean Clifford was never an elite quarterback at the NFL level or the college level. Drew Alar is special. He's the former #1 overall prospect in his recruiting class, 5-star kid. But don't dismiss the running backs. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, both 1,000-yard rushers as true freshmen. They're coming back. Olu Fashanu, the left tackle, is going to be probably a top 3 pick in the draft next year. So they have a lot of pieces in place. And I've had a lot of conversations with James Franklin over the offseason. That it's all been about alignment for them in terms of the new offensive athletic director, Pat Kraft, who has basically opened the checkbook for the football program and the athletic program. A lot of facilities upgrades going on there. There's alignment of ideas. I think, Rob, this is the year where they kind of set the table and they knock on the doorstep of the playoff. Maybe they make it in. Okay. But they have a 2 or 3 year window with Alar where I think they have the chance to win multiple championships.
Hey, since you brought up Penn State, I want to expand and ask you about the Big Ten in general. Your thoughts on teams from the Pac-12 joining the Big Ten? There's something to be said for tradition. And why would you mess up what has been a tradition for so many decades? And now you got teams like UCLA. I know it's about money, but still, it just doesn't make sense, though.
It doesn't, but I'll tell you what, I'm really looking forward to the trip out to the Coliseum.
Way to work that in. Nice.
No, but I'm kind of with you. And it's kind of a logistical nightmare, right? If you're going to fly USC in for the whiteout in November, okay, bring it on. That'll be fun. But UCLA flying to Rutgers for women's basketball in February, right? I mean,
yeah, but we're worried about the students getting their schoolwork done when they're on these cross country trips. Yeah,
I don't think they're done though. I think there's a chance you'll wind up seeing Oregon or Oregon State wind up in the Big Ten. You're going to have to balance it out. Arizona, maybe Arizona State, because you can't have 2 schools flying cross country and the rest of schools flying cross country out that way without some sort of balance in terms of your divisions. But that's just the way of the world in modern college football. And I could easily see we're maybe 2 years away from the Big Ten and the SEC being the major college football conferences. And that's all that's left.
It's going to be a have and have not. That's what I just hope the little guy doesn't get totally muscled out. Every once in a while, Cincinnati will make a run.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Oh, it's totally going to happen, but it's going to become like Major League Baseball, where it's like you have the Royals and then you have the Yankees. I hope it's not that extreme, but we'll see. Yeah. Speaking as a Temple grad. Anyway, Matt, good work. All right, so I want to tell everybody where they can check you out. First of all, what's your Threads handle? Let's start there.
We kept it all the same. We got at Matt Lombardo NFL on Threads and on Twitter. You can check me out there, and of course, you can read the work on heavy.com.
Okay, you got the podcast as well, the Matt Lombardo Show. Matt, keep up the good work, man. We're looking forward to talking to you during the football season. Thank you, sir.
You're good, bro.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Matt, take care, buddy. Always good stuff. Lombo can talk about everything. That's what we love.
All right, Rob. After talking to Lombo now, how soon will you get a new Threads account?
I told you. So what I did. Here's what I'm going to do, Derek. I was probably going to do it over the weekend. I told you yesterday I was probably going to do it.
All right.
It's going to be, it's not like I'm jumping over to Threads and giving, I'll be going there every 3 seconds doing commentary like some people like to do, or posting pictures of the food that I'm about to eat or whatever. I'll go on there. I'll promote us. If it helps to promote anything we're doing, I'll do it. That's all.
And see, Xander just said Jacobs is already on Thread.
Yeah, I have to. I'll get over. I'll probably do it tomorrow. Actually,
really?
Yeah,
I'm gonna hold out.
So, Xander, where can people follow us on Threads? Is it just do a search for Jacob? If you want to throw that in the chat, to let me know. So if people are jumping over there
at JAKIB Sports.
At JAKIB Sports. Okay, yeah, same as that. Same for Twitter. So it's very simple. Just keep everything uniform. Yeah.
Hey, have fun with that.
You're going to be like the Ray Didinger holdout. You're not doing it. No cell phone.
Ray,
Yes.
Ray doesn't get a cell phone. I'm not getting on Threads.
I got you. All right. Here's what we're going to do when we come back. Let's pose the question that we usually do right at the top, but let's hit it when we come back. Biggest concern for the Eagles going into 2023. Bigger concern. Players lost, coaches lost. We'll dive into that when we get back. We'll also look at the depth that they have as well. He's Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. We are hanging with you. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network on this Friday. Let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. All right, folks, you work way too hard not to have the right person assist you in investing your money. All right. You work too hard to let that happen. And you want to be taken care of when you get older. You want your kids to be taken care of when you get older. And you want to make sure you're maximizing and getting a bang for your buck. Well, Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group can help you with that, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. You might have a small business and you need help with your employee benefits. That's another resource that Jim can help you with. Personally, I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim. I couldn't be any happier. And you can bounce anything off of them too. I do all the time. Give him a call, 610-996-4751. 610-996-4751. You could also email him, Murray, MURRAY, .jim@principal.com. That's Murray.jim@principal.com.